I'm Lydia Wilson, a journalist for New Lines magazine and the presenter of the BBC series The Secret History of Writing. I have a PhD on the Arabic philosopher Al-Farabi, and I'm sitting with one of my doctoral supervisors, and now friend, James Montgomery, the Sir Thomas Adams's Professor of Arabic at the University of Cambridge and Fellow of the British Academy. We're here to discuss authors, texts and ideas from the rich heritage of classical Arabic literature.
Chapter 6, a reading from a poem by Nuwas. The swallows are back, let's have a drink. It's green fields and shade next. Their song brings the summer, an end to the cold, filling the sky with calls like the click of shears clipping wool, their nests in the houses like lines drawn by a stylus. The swallows are back, let's have a drink of a precious wine that shoots sparks in the cup, guarded for 70 long years by a pagan who worships her dusk and dawn. After the third cup, the party jabbers like rutting camels among the females.
Abu Nuwas was born around 756 of the Common Era, not long after the Abbasid dynasty took power over the Muslim world. His birth was in the province of Khuzestan, on the eastern side of the Persian Gulf in modern-day Iran. His Persian mother was a bamboo weaver, and his Arab father was a soldier in the army of the last Umayyad Caliph, Marwan II. From these humble beginnings, Abu Nuwas rose to be one of the most famous, or even infamous, poets of Abbasid times, even appearing in several stories of 1001 Nights, and his fame and poetry have endured until today. The family moved to Basra in modern-day Iraq when Abu Nuwas was young, where he went to school memorising the Quran at an early age. At some point he began work as an aloe cutter in nearby Kufa, also in modern-day Iraq, where Abu Nuwas met a key person, Walaba ibn al-Hubab, who was a member of the group known as Mujan al-Kufa, the transgressives of Kufa. Abu Nuwas returned to Basra, where he studied many subjects with a variety of experts. He learnt from a philologist, an expert in ancient poetry and its tribal law, Khalaf al-Ahmar. He also acquired a basic grounding in fiqh, religious knowledge and legal jurisprudence, as well as in other Quranic disciplines. From other scholars he acquired knowledge in battle lore of the Arabs, lexicography and recondite vocabulary, and hadith, the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad and events of his life. Abu Nuwas then moved to Baghdad, possibly during the accession to the caliphate of Harun al-Rashid, a famous figure in Muslim history, not least for his patronage of the arts and scholarship. And so began Abu Nuwas's colourful and varied career as a poet. Some fine panegyrics by Abu Nuwas to Harun have survived, but they didn't prevent the caliph imprisoning him twice, once for heresy and once for a satire composed against the northern Arabs, tantamount to an act of disloyalty to the caliph and the Abbasid elite. Abu Nuwas became a close companion of the caliph's son Al-Amin, and we have a number of less formal eulogies of him, in a relaxed, more intimate mode, presumably from before his accession to the caliphate. But this friendship wasn't enough to secure the patronage Abu Nuwas needed. And so, in 805 or 806, he left Baghdad and travelled to Egypt, where he did manage to secure patronage of Al-Hasib ibn Abd al-Hamid, who was in charge of the country's land tax registry. However, Al-Hasib's fall from grace, in just a couple of years later, brought an end to the poet's time in Egypt, which wasn't the end of his woes, for on his return to Baghdad, Abu Nuwas was imprisoned. His fortunes finally took a turn for the better on the death of Harun al-Rashid in 809. The new caliph, Al-Amin, quickly freed his erstwhile convivialist and favoured poet. And so began Abu Nuwas's most successful years, composing much of the poetry, including the wine poetry that most people know him for now. But prison was looming again, Al-Amin's brother, Al-Ma'mun, denounced the dissolute lifestyle of the court from the pulpit in Khorasan, a proclamation that at least by implication included Abu Nuwas, who was then imprisoned. Worse was in store for Al-Amin, who was beheaded, with Al-Ma'mun taking power. Shortly thereafter, Abu Nuwas died in the house of the Nawbakht family, sometime between 813 and 815 of the Common Era. I know that's an awful lot of information, but we'll try and unpack the life and the works of this brilliant and charismatic writer over the next hour or so, as well as the context he's writing in. And now it's a lot because we have such a wealth of detail about his life, even if some incidents remain a bit murky. Can you explain the sources for all this information? How do we know, for example, he was an aloe cutter?
So shortly after Abu Nuwas's death, well, actually, let me rephrase that. During Abu Nuwas's life, he was already something of a legend, if not a self-made myth. And shortly after his death, one of his pupils, possibly his pupils, but certainly one of his admirers, wrote an Akhbar Abi Nuwas, which I would translate as the sort of life and times of Abu Nuwas.
Yeah.
So he wrote a kind of life story of Abu Nuwas. And it also seems that Abu Nuwas's poetry was so popular that it had many imitators. And by about 80 or so years after his death, there arose the movement to try and edit or contain his legacy, because in order to determine what they thought were genuine poems by Abu Nuwas and what were spurious. But I think the fact that we know so much about him is simply because he was such a celebrity.
Right. And everyone writing about him.
As my kids would say, he was a ledge. Right.
Do you think he was an influencer?
I think if he were on social media, he would have a massive following.
And that's also why his own works are so well preserved.
Yes.
It works about him, works by him.
Yes. He's one of those individuals who immediately have an impact.
Right.
And way beyond the circles in which they operate. So if you let's think in terms of music. When I'm thinking and perhaps talking about Abu Nuwas, like to draw an example of Mozart.
Right.
So there is this enormous wealth of natural talent.
Right.
From a very early age, there is a musical signature.
Yeah.
To the works.
Absolutely.
To the composition.
Yeah.
Even from the early stuff when he was sort of 7, or the operas when he was 11, they're recognizable.
Yeah.
And then music everywhere else starts to change.
Yeah.
Almost during his lifetime. Right?
Yeah.
And I think Abu Nuwas is sort of similar.
Oh, wow.
That I think it's sort of similar in that regard. That he comes up with this way of using Arabic, which is so natural.
Yeah. But also recognizably.
Yes. Unmistakably.
Unmistakably.
It has a signature.
Right.
And the signature is its simplicity, which, of course, as we know, is an indication of just how deeply complicated it actually is. You know, the amount of effort that it takes to acquire that simplicity and the amount of reflection.
Yes.
I think Abu Nuwas is just one of those individuals that appears in history over the centuries, and everything changes all around about them. They're kind of like a force field.
Yeah, yeah.
It changes how people think and write and hear, be it poetry, be it music.
Yeah, yeah. But it does. Am I right in saying that his origins are fairly humble?
Yes, I mean, of course.
Was social mobility a thing in Abbasid times? Was it his raw talent, as you're saying, that got him noticed?
The first thing is, what we have to imagine is how personal networks were established.
Right.
So the fact that his father had been connected to the household of a nobleman
Right.
would then extend to his family.
Right. Right.
And even if you no longer live under the protection of that household, you maintained that network when you travelled.
Yes.
So other members of that extended network you could contact.
Yeah.
And perhaps, be housed by or whatever.
Yeah. So an intricate social
Yes,
web of
yes.
connections.
And for anyone of any talent or ambition or whatever, you could have many, many of these networks at any one time.
Yes.
They weren't exclusive.
And if they're coming through other family members.
Yes. And so the task for example, a poet like Abu Nuwas is to get the patronage of an elite network.
Yes.
An elite family.
Yeah.
Which he doesn't manage to do for whatever reason until much later.
Right.
In the early years, which we can come to. But so social mobility was possible. It was made possible through your command of Arabic.
Ah, okay. That's how you earned your stripes, as it were.
That's how you proved useful.
Right. Okay.
Yes. And that's why we start to see around the end of the 8th and the start of the 9th century that there are lots of people who are not native speakers of Arabic making their way in society through their command of Arabic. One of the people that we devoted another podcast to, Al-Jahid, is another example of how you can be born very poor, but your command of Arabic then sets you off as unique. And the number of people who were, as it were, using Arabic professionally vastly outnumbers the number of people who are native speakers of Arabic using Arabic professionally.
Yes.
So Arabic becomes your social ladder.
Yes. Well, let's just stay in the early times for a minute because I'm fascinated by these transgressives of Kufa.
Yes.
How did he come into contact with them and what's transgressive about them?
Yeah, so we have to understand what exactly we mean by transgression, right? Mm-hmm. And they're a very, very murky group, these transgressors of Kufa. They seem to be sort of almost... we might think of them as dropouts. Didn't perhaps lived in a equivalent of a commune. Didn't follow normal social rules.
Okay.
That's if you look at it from one perspective. Mm-hmm. So let me begin with the concept of transgression.
Yeah.
Okay. The understanding of transgression indicates someone or an act, let me say, an act which doesn't abide by social norms.
Yes.
Or by accepted conduct.
Right.
But which is almost always intended to be witty or funny or amusing.
Right.
And so we find many examples of otherwise pious scholars committing acts of transgression. So the Mujan of Kufa, the transgressors of Kufa, seem to be people who, as it were constantly violating social norms.
Okay. In their behaviour as well as their speech
actions, their speech, how they engage with the rest of society.
And do you think Abu Nuwas picked up any tendencies from this? Or he had them already?
I'm sure that a lot of the features of how Abu Nuwas later presented himself were developed in that group. So there's a reference to him dressing in a particular way.
Okay.
That is interesting because it doesn't conform. The fact that it's commented on means that it wasn't a normal way to dress.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So he's wearing a gown with exaggeratedly wide sleeves.
Yeah.
He's wearing a particular type of sandal that no one else was wearing.
Yeah.
And so it's possible to think of them sort of like, fops or dandies, but I don't think so, because I think actually they have more in common with groups of young, unmarried men who could often patrol the streets in order to censure behaviour that they thought wasn't proper, who lived together in these communities in such a way that they were self-contained.
Yeah.
They would have dressed in a certain way. I don't want to bring in gangs, but I'm kind of I'm skirting around the word gang so hard that
you can't find any other word.
Yes, yeah. So I mean, rude boys is a kind of way of thinking about it. You know, they're boys with attitude.
Yes.
And of course, they're all unmarried.
Right.
They are not elite.
Yes.
And of course, we know the sort of things that happen when groups of men or boys youths of a certain age live together and abide by their own rules and not by the rules of the rest of society.
Yeah, a frat house.
Yes. Yeah, it has aspects of all of those things.
Right.
The interesting thing about the transgressors of Kofa is that some of the sources refer to them also as having odd religious beliefs.
Okay.
It's unsure whether there's any justification for this. They might have belonged to a particular type of early Shi'i belief that in the course of the development of Shi'ism was not continued, was discarded. They might have been influenced by old Iranian religions.
Yeah. They're right.
We just don't know, but they're not, as it were, decent, upstanding citizens, is perhaps.
Yes, they're transgressing in more than one way.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Characterised by poetry, I should add.
That is key.
A poet.
Right.
And so a lot of their behaviour is characterised by a poetry. Not a lot of it that's survived, and some of it is very similar to some of the more outrageous poems by Nuwas.
Okay. So he's getting early influences. These
Yeah.
early influences are important, I mean.
Yes.
So can we just pause a little bit on his name? And this is a complicated question always, and we touched on it with Al-Jahiz for a start, because there's always a story to Arab names because they can have multiple monikers. There's the tribal, there's family, there's it becomes attached to who your firstborn is or your first son. Yeah. Can you explain Abu Nuwas's name?
Yeah, so his given name, I guess we would say, is Al-Hasan ibn Hanit, the son of Hanit. And Hanit would have been the father that was the soldier in the Umayyad army. He has a parental name, which is Abu Ali, suggesting that he had a son called Ali.
Yep.
And his name that we refer to him as Abu Nuwas is what we call a cognomen, which is like Cicero for Marcus Tullius in the Roman Empire. Like it's a name by which you would sort of circulate. Yeah. Now, as to what Abu Nuwas actually means is far from clear. So Abu means father, and Nuwas is a particular style of hair. But also Nuwas is part of the name of a very famous 5th century king of South Arabia, Dhu Nuwas, who was a kind of legendary hero.
Any connection to a hairstyle?
We're not sure. He may have had similar hairstyle. But the reason I mention that is because of Abu Nuwas's South Arabian network connections that he got through his father that you mentioned earlier. Right. And you mentioned also his satire of the Northern Arabians. Yes. Which got him into trouble. Yeah. So it's possible to entertain Dhu Nuwas as a kind of model for Abu Nuwas. Yeah. Expressing some form of South Arabian allegiance, heritage, or whatever. Yeah. I think the most likely one is that Nuwas refers to a particular type of dishevelled hairstyle.
He was transgressive in that way as well.
Yes. Whether it's sort of bangs with unkempt hair, or not.
Don't know
I'm
the
not sure.
details.
But actually, it's one area that we're really sadly negligent in, is understanding and identifying Abbasid hairstyles. And it's more important than you might think.
Okay.
Because it was often how you presented your allegiance in public.
Really?
Yes.
So it's an marker of identity?
I think yes.
It could be?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'd never heard that before. So that's a research subject waiting to happen.
Well, I think someone would have done it already if there was enough to go by. But I'm always perplexed when I see a reference to a particular hairstyle.
Yeah.
As to A, what it may have been, and B, what its actual social significance is.
Okay. Well, I've always thought of him as dishevelled, but maybe we should
the man with dishevelled hair, the man with dangling locks, the man with unkempt, unruly hair.
Appearance, right. Yeah. Something like this. It all sounds self-fashioned and sort of rollicking. It sounds very energetic and full of life.
Yes, and I think it's intended to attract attention.
Yes. Again, part of the self-fashioning.
You're supposed to notice.
Yeah. And, I mean, you've already touched on this, that the patronage of a poet is of vital importance in the Abbasid times. And there's also a massive amount of patronage available, isn't there, for poetry? It's really highly regarded, prized, paid, if you can find the right patron.
Yes.
And that's an interpersonal relationship, isn't it?
Yes.
So can you describe how that relationship really worked?
So the first thing to bear in mind is that it's a patronage relationship, it's interpersonal, but it is not like the type of family relationship network we were talking about earlier.
Right.
Which was, as it were, portable and became yours.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you were born into the member of a household, you stayed a member of that household, whether you used that membership or not. The relationship between patron and poet has to be almost renewed each time you perform a poem on the part of the poet, and it has to be reciprocated on the part of the patron by reward to seal the compact. Right?
So you're not being paid in advance for your work.
No.
You are writing on spec, we would say now.
Yes.
And hoping it met the standard or the type, the expectations of your patron.
Yes.
That's really tough life. You're living from poem to poem.
Pretty much. I mean, the rewards are enormous.
Right.
With the right person, if you succeed.
If you succeed.
The stakes are very high. But of course, it's extremely difficult to get access to some of the elite patrons. There is the institution of the chamberlain, the person who manages access. And there are treatises about the role of the chamberlain and how to get access to the chamberlain. There are many anecdotes of people sort of hanging around at the gates of a wealthy individual.
Yeah.
We're kind of familiar with some of those stories from, let's say, Elizabethan England or whatever, presenting petitions at the gate. So it's not that dissimilar in that respect. But once you did get access, the benefits were enormous, but equally, you were with a group of other people who were your competitors.
Right.
And who were out to make sure you didn't succeed.
Yeah, and were they all pretending to be friends at the same time?
Yeah, of course. I imagine it's a sort of a gathering of frenemies.
Yeah, like auditions for actors or singers or something.
Yeah, everyone's up for the part. And,
in direct competition.
Yeah, and there are sort of examples of famous poets who were very good at composing poems, but not very good at delivering them.
Oh, so they couldn't meet the standard.
Or whatever. And in some cases, they would have to have their understudy come and do the performance.
The delivery.
Yeah, because every poet, once successful, would have a kind of acolyte or attendant or an understudy called a transmitter, a rawi in Arabic, and very often they were much better at the performance of the poem.
Yeah.
When we don't know how the poems were performed, though, right? So we don't know whether they were dramatic or whether they were performed in a particular singing style, whether they were declaimed, whether they were performed with great flourishes.
We don't have any kind of manual for that kind of thing.
No.
What were the patrons after, and what kind of poetry met their high standards?
So the patrons, of course, couldn't be patrons unless they were praised. So the whole society is based on patronage networks. Mm-hmm. And if you're going to be, you might be high-born and elite, but if your high-born elite status isn't celebrated, it's not worth anything.
So this is for the social praise.
Yes, and we're dealing with semi-institutionalized societies.
Yeah.
And the patrons had to be praised in order to be seen as patrons, because generosity is one of the main currencies of the system. It's the spondylics that oil the wheels. And so from the patron's point of view, it was the sense that your nobility was being celebrated, but also by virtue of being celebrated, you were being inducted in to the patronal hall of fame. Like you were joining the sort of all of the community of the praised, past, present and future.
So you're going into the historical record.
Yes.
As somebody fitting for praise.
Yes.
So it's panegyrics is the basic mode.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, it is the cement that holds the whole system together.
Right.
And when I was first studying Arabic, there was a general sense in the discipline that panegyrics were not worth bothering with. Well, they were not original because someone had paid for them, and they were obsequious because some of the terms of praise are far from modest. And there was the old sort of Victorian still attitude that these were somehow insincere.
Because it had been paid full praise.
Yes, yeah, and it was flattery and all the sort of prejudices, but it totally missing the point.
Yeah, it's still a vehicle for a poet.
Yeah, but it's just how the society was held together.
Yeah.
Right? And so within the universe of the praise poem, the object of praise, the patron, is presented as the guarantor of equilibrium. It's their presence and their wisdom and their nobility that ensures stability in the world.
Right.
And that acts as a barrier against the depredations of fate and misfortune.
Right.
So the patron then becomes, as it were, one of the mechanisms whereby God's society on earth is perpetuated.
Right. So it's a really necessary function of
and from all sorts of considerations. But obviously not every poem was successful.
Yeah.
And there are cases where the patron says, didn't like that.
You're not getting any cash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And his advisors say to him, you haven't paid the poet.
Yeah.
And in one case, the patron says, well, he said I was able to do X, Y, and Z, which I couldn't. So I said I was going to pay him, which I'm not. So I think we're both equal in terms of the exchange. Right? Wow. And so it was fairly brutal.
Yeah. And I mean, there's so much poetry from this time. It isn't all panegyrics and praise. And
no, of course not. No.
So are they paying for anything else? And the poet is just making a good enough living from the panegyrics to fund their other creativity?
Well, with Abu Nuwas, we're at the stage before it becomes mainstream, commonplace or standard for rulers at courts to build up a coterie of experts, right? So with Abu Nuwas, we're still at the stage in which this is beginning to emerge, right?
Okay.
So within about 100 to 150 years later, you find that all these courts spring up all over the Middle East, where you have the ruler of that court, and he will have 5 or 6 poets. He will have astronomers, scientists. He will have philosophers, and he will pay for them to come. Sort of like maybe like Paris Saint-Germain buying all the most expensive players in the world to come and play for them, right?
Yeah.
And that becomes a mark of celebrity and becomes an indication of not only just of celebrity, but of the fact that you are the rightful occupier of that position as a patron in society.
Yeah. It's self-reinforcing.
Yes. In Abu Nuwas' time, it's a little bit more fluid and still perhaps in the early stages in infancy. I'm not sure that a patron would expect anything else other than on key events throughout the year to be praised.
Okay.
Right? So an important one is the Persian festival of Nowruz, the New Year.
Yeah.
Another would be the Eid celebrations.
Okay.
So they would expect a poem.
I mean, this is in the very first decades of the Abbasid Empire, isn't it? It really is settling socially, politically, even geographically. The borders aren't quite fixed, are they? Yeah,
and even during Harun al-Rashid's reign, which was supposed to be one of stability, you have Harun's action in destroying the ruling family of the Barmakids. Which is one of the great famous stories of this very powerful family. There was intermarriage between the Caliph's family and the Barmakids and so on, but all of a sudden Harun brings them down, eliminates them all. So we're not talking about a period of great stability either. And then on Harun's death, you have the tension between the two sons, Al-Amin and Al-Ma'mun, which eventually ends up in a civil war between Amin and Ma'mun, with the beheading of Al-Amin by one of Ma'mun's generals. So
it's
there's a society that is starting to take shape, and there is a court culture that's starting to take shape, but it's still very much in its infancy.
As is the nature of the patron.
Yes.
And that makes it even harder to find one. And that did shape a lot of Abu Nuwas's decisions, didn't it? Chasing the patron.
Yes, because he was not successful with Harun al-Rashid. In fact, it's very unlikely that he ever performed before Harun al-Rashid.
Even though we have copies of panegyrics.
We have copies of 5 poems or so that he wrote for him. They may have been given to other elite members of the court that Abu Nuwas had connections to, who may have then shown it to someone else and said, do you think the Caliph would want to hear this or would respond favourably and so on? But it's not at all clear that they ever actually physically were in the same room at the same time.
And was he writing a huge range at this point already?
Yeah, because what we have to remember about Arabic poetry is that it is the sort of the language of communication amongst the educated.
Amazing.
Right? You can't have a social occasion without a poem or a number of poems. And so, for example, you go with an elite friend on a hunting expedition, you'll be expected to produce a couple of hunting poems to celebrate the event of the hunt.
Okay.
To be performed at the party at the end of the expedition.
And is there any reward for that? The meal of
that I don't know.
No, it's hard to make a living, I'm thinking.
Possibly. I mean, I think it's more one of those instances where not doing it would have been so unrewarding.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, for your own reputation.
To violate it would not have been wise.
And so, what I'm trying to kind of make our way towards is
Yeah.
this larger than life figure that
Yes.
you've already described. Now, is that just irrepressible from the beginning in his reputation, in his poetry? And is that maybe why he found it hard to find a patron at first?
Yeah, interesting. I think he found it hard finding it hard to find a patron. I think let's just restrict that to the caliph.
Oh,
He
yes.
obviously had powerful friends.
Oh, yeah.
Nuwas,
Yeah.
right? And with the collapse of the Barmakid family,
Yeah.
it was easier for him
Yeah.
because he'd obviously upset someone at some point
Yeah.
amongst the Barmakids, whether personally or whether through reputation
All right.
or whatever. So
Once they were out of the way.
yes. But a lot of this, I think, behaviour you have to understand is contextual, it's
Yeah.
situational.
Yeah.
So his, as it were, rude boy behaviour in Kufa may have been something that stayed in Kufa as behaviour, but the reputational which followed him
Yeah, right.
elsewhere. We
Right.
just don't know.
We don't know those things.
No. So to think of him as this perpetual bad boy
Yeah.
is possibly an exaggeration. I think he was very, very adept at creating his own myth.
Yeah. Yeah, the self-fashioning from the beginning right
Yes.
the way through.
Yes.
But it's a very mixed myth, isn't it?
Yes.
The amount of labels he has attracted and attracted during his lifetime. Do you think we could run through some of the
let's have a look.
characteristics he's famous for, which is just too varied to really keep your brain on?
So some of the identities that he's been credited with, first of all, heretic.
Yeah.
It does seem that he would at times court controversy through a type of transgressive behaviour that was very easily misunderstood or misconstrued as not humorous, but as serious. Right? So if, for example, he made fun of some aspect of religious practice, it's almost as if he was skating on too thin ice.
Right.
And allowed his enemies to use it against him.
Yeah.
So,
and sorry,
go on.
There's also the fact I mentioned. He knew the Quran by heart, and
Yes.
and I think there's a massive amount of evidence of that within the poetry.
Yes.
And so he has. That's not transgressive, is it? That's pure allusion, not illusion. That's reverence for the Quran. Is that an okay way of putting it?
I think it is, except he's not shy sometimes of alluding to the Quran in contexts that we would find uncomfortable.
Okay.
So we haven't spoken about the wine poetry that you
yes.
mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
And in many of his descriptions of symposia, of wine drinking events, he will create a kind of paradise on earth.
Mm-hmm.
And he will use items from the Quranic paradise
Yeah.
that are surrounding him in this, what we would think of as un-Islamic environment. But I think that's partly down to us.
Yeah.
So, the drinking might take place in a garden, and he will describe the garden in terms that derive from the Quranic paradise.
Yeah.
And one could make quite a lot of that and say it's a realization of paradise on earth or whatever.
Yeah.
Or one could just say that the language is so natural between the two types of gardens that is quite...
Same word.
Not quite neutral, but thing to do, but natural.
It could just be a garden.
It could just be an extremely evocative garden. So memorizing the Quran was also very, very renowned for his knowledge of the hadith, sayings and deeds of Prophet Muhammad.
Right.
But equally, he was not short of attacking those scholars who were experts in the hadith.
Right.
So he's not actually attacking the hadith, but he's attacking
Yeah.
the kind of pretensions that those scholars would bring to their knowledge or
Yeah.
whatever. But by and large, his reputation as a heretic
Yeah.
is a very difficult one for us to refuse, because he seemed to invite
It's the thin ice
Yes.
bit.
Yeah, very, very thin ice.
Yeah. And that's always difficult to assess, like stand-up comedy or something.
Yes.
Where do you draw the line between offensive?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what some people find funny,
Yeah.
others will find completely unacceptable.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sorry I stopped you on the very first category that you identified, which was heretic.
Yes.
Do you want to go on with any more?
A modern identity that he's been given is as some kind of countercultural
Right.
icon, right? We've spoken about rude boy behaviour, about transgressive forms of dress.
Yeah.
Of course, he has many, many love poems in which he describes love objects who are clearly male and who are clearly young and who are clearly on the cusp of adolescence because they haven't started to grow a beard yet. And of course, this gives rise to the homosexual Nuwas, whatever that might mean in and of itself. Another one is that because he makes fun of aspects of old Arabic poetry, that he must have been part of what some have identified as a pro-Persian, possibly pro-Persian nationalist movement called the Sho'obiyya. I think that's highly, highly unlikely.
Yeah.
There were other reasons for making fun of some of the traditions of the old Arabic poetry that don't necessarily make you a pro-Persian nationalist. I think for Abu Nuwas, his South Arabian connections were much more
And his
important.
father was Arab, right?
Yes, yeah. One that identity that the tradition sort of has generated, and you referred to it when you mentioned that he appears in some of the Arabian Nights, is that he's a sort of court jester.
Yeah, that
the
doesn't
great
seem
sort of figure of fun. And of course the jesters were allowed to break all sorts of rules, and they were given the kind of freedom and everything. But the court bit is probably the thing I would object to the most.
Because he didn't spend much time there. Yes, because the 1001 Nights are based at the Harun al-Rashid's court, and so he wasn't particularly welcome there. Right.
But by and large, what I think was maybe the last one I should mention here is that the later tradition identified him as a Sufi.
Oh, yes.
Right. Now, why would it do that? That's because as Sufism developed and Sufi poetry became further advanced, the Sufis used the language of wine and of love as their way of trying to express the feelings that experiences they were having
of the divine.
And so a retrojection is that Abu Nuwas must have been a Sufi. All of this stuff that he says about wine and about his love for a particular boy or whatever must be intimations of his feelings for the divine.
And is that an earned position, do you think? Or
well, there aren't any other Sufis of that type from the early 9th century, so I can only imagine that it's actually a later phenomenon and not an early Abbasid
projected
one.
Backwards onto him.
And perhaps encouraged by a lack of comfort with some of the things that he talks about in his poetry.
And a way to fit them into being acceptable, maybe.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Now, he does himself tell a lot of stories about his own life, doesn't he? Which is also to do with the self-fashioning.
What do you mean? In his poetry? Or?
You tell me, actually. Where did I find this?
I mean, it might be in those books, the book that emerged a few decades after his death, the
Oh, yeah.
The Akhbar, the life and times of Abu Nuwas, where he is, he is a living, breathing, larger than life character.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about when he gets kissed on his bare bum. And he farts.
Yes.
Those sorts of stories. Where
Yeah.
are they coming from?
Well, I think they're coming from the
The
mythologizing.
Akhbar.
Yes.
Or the
The-
self-mythologizing.
No,
Or no,
the
the later.
mythologizing,
Right, okay.
yes.
It's not him.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and what did he say? Because that's the just desserts or something
Yeah,
for
yeah,
kissing
that's
somebody's.
you've got what you deserve.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, all right, let's just launch into the poetry then, because
Right.
we have been skirting around it, or rather referring to it and drawing on it. So he was very well educated.
Extremely, yes.
And so he knew all the conventions
Yes.
of, especially the pre-Islamic,
Yes.
that you are also very familiar with.
Yes.
How much of that in general passed through into his poetry?
Passed through. So almost all of it.
Yeah.
Evidence or of slightly different. Let me begin by telling a story that is associated with him. That when he expressed a desire with his teacher in ancient Arabic poetry that he wanted to become a poet, the teacher said, "Go away, memorize 1,000 poems, come back, recite 1,000 poems to me, and we'll see what." 1,000 here means a very large number.
Oh, okay.
So Abu Nuwas goes away and memorizes a very large number of poems,
Yeah.
comes back and is examined on this poetry, and he passes. And the teacher says, "Well, now go away and forget all the poems, and then you'll be a poet." Now, I don't know, I don't have that, I'm not, my memory is nowhere near as good as this. I don't know how you unremember
That
a
was my
huge
question.
number of poems.
Because
But-
I've read books about the medieval craft of memory.
Yes.
I haven't read anything about how you choose to forget what
Yes.
you've memorized.
Yes.
Does anyone explain this?
No.
It's
no, I
like
have-
it's like pulling your knitting out.
Again, I find myself resorting to music and to jazz this time, where in the 40s and 50s, before bebop and so on, it was the American songbook that every jazz player
Okay.
played and memorized and so on.
Right.
But then, as for example, someone like Miles Davis came along,
Yeah.
the American songbook is in all that stuff. You can sort of feel it, but you can't hear it. Right? Because it's their
Yes, exactly.
it's their musical signature.
Yeah. Yeah. And
They wouldn't be experimenting the way they're experimenting without that stuff.
right. Right.
So somehow I think forget
Yeah.
the great number of poems means something along the lines of do not try to replicate
Yes.
any of the lines of the poem,
Yeah.
but get them in your brain to the point that they become the way that when you set out to compose a poem, they are natural.
They're internalized.
Yes.
You've internalized.
Yes.
And we are all products of our reading, actually.
Yes.
So that's very good advice to go away and absolutely imbue yourself in other successful or
Yes.
brilliant or eloquent or whatever they are
Yeah.
ideals of.
Yes.
And then forget about it. And I've experienced that myself in all sorts of ways. I banned myself from reading Virginia Woolf essays at some point because there were too many in my head.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
kind of thing. So
So I think that's what the how we should think about Abu Nuwas in this regard in relationship to the ancient tradition.
yeah, they've built him.
Yes. But sometimes it erupts.
Yeah.
And so he will self-consciously draw your attention to the fact that he's using an example of convention from an ancient poem so that he can explode it and turn it on its head.
Yeah.
Sometimes he will accept it and move on,
Yeah.
usually in the more formal panegyrics. But often he'll say, for example, I'm not going to bother with any of this stuff that the old poets spoke about,
Yeah.
and he's defining himself as
Yeah.
the culmination of the tradition. That happens perhaps most obviously in is a very substantial collection of wine poems,
Right.
which he's become so famous for. There's, I think, over 300 that have survived
Yeah.
under his name.
And they're wonderful, aren't they?
They're a huge kaleidoscope of skill,
Yeah.
and what comes across is a kind of infectious sense of fun in them, and that is what I think has endeared him so much to Western scholars in
Right.
particular.
Right.
Because, we often talk in our podcasts about the distance that separates you from the object,
material.
the material.
Yeah.
And this personality that seems to be so recognisable, that is reaching out and inviting us in.
Yeah. Seems very personal
yes.
and intimate.
But when you take a step back and look at it,
Yeah.
it sort of vanishes. And it's as if there's something else that's going on there. When we don't read the poem as this kind of Falstaffian bonhomie and wonder why is the wine being described in such overtly religious terms? What is the implications of the setting and so on? You can conceivably construct a radically different approach to his wine poetry than just this sort of Falstaffian attraction.
So you can do the defamiliarization with enough knowledge.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I tried it myself. I wasn't 100% successful, but I wanted just to encourage all of us to take a step back and not just jump in and say, oh, this is Abu Nuwas, this is what he must mean.
Right.
Because
Party animal.
Such positions mean that you don't read with any degree of attention.
Depth. Yeah, you're finding what you expect.
Yes. And that applies particularly to a genre of poetry that he composed, about 44 of them or so, which are poems of worldly rejection and renunciation.
Right.
So you wouldn't expect
the same writer.
Falstaff to be standing on stage saying, think of the grave, give up the pleasures, and so on.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting about Abu Nuwas's renunciant poems is that they feature very, very prominently the notion of God as merciful and as forgiving. So the other renunciant poems are all about, we're all going to die soon, think of the grave, give up your greed, your cupidity, your miserliness, be kind to orphans, go to the mosque, pray, prepare for death. Abu Nuwas brings in this very personal element, I think, where he's celebrating God's gift of mercy, but he doesn't take it for granted. Because the moment you take it for granted, you won't qualify for mercy, right? And what you then get a sense of through reading these poems is that Abu Nuwas is profoundly concerned about his deathbed moment. The moment that the soul leaves the body. And this was a great concern for the tradition generally. One bad thought and you could ruin a whole lifetime of piety.
Oh, no way.
Right? So it's a real position
of pressure.
Existential anxiety.
It's making me quite anxious.
Yeah. And so what I find myself thinking is that the really personal poems are not the wine poems, but they're the renunciant poems.
Yeah.
The ones that show him at his most vulnerable and his most confessional.
Yeah, of course. What about the love poems, though?
Well, I mean, there are so many love poems, largely of three types. There are poems expressing love for beloveds who are boys. There are poems expressing love for beloveds who are girls. There are poems expressing love for beloveds who are girls who present as boys. The one that's missing is poems for love objects who are boys who present as girls. And there is a class
There is?
Yes, males who present as females.
Yeah, I've forgotten the Arabic word, but I read a book about it once.
Yeah, mukhanathat.
Oh, yes. Okay, thank you.
And those are the only types that his poetry doesn't celebrate.
Right.
But his poetry is, sometimes these love poems are addressed specifically to the love object, but more often than not, I think they're addressed to other men.
Yeah.
And they explore a kind of type of masculinity or a version of masculinity which is prepared to surrender its mastery voluntarily to another person, male or female, who then becomes the master.
Oh.
So the masculinity is sort of turned on its head, and the master becomes the mastered. And because we must remember that many of these love objects were unfree people.
Oh.
Right?
So it's subversion of the power relation.
Yes. So inversion of the power dynamic.
Right.
So a lot of these poems operate in terms of reversing the roles. Some of them are just outright pleas to be recognised and to be noticed.
Yeah.
Some of them have very, very witty encounters,
Yeah.
repartee.
Some a bit obscene?
That comes in the category as a special volume of his poetry. It was called transgressive poetry.
Right, reference to Kufa again.
Yes, and to this social phenomenon whereby you could break the rules if you were doing it to be witty.
Right, yeah.
It didn't mean that was how you lived, but it was a stand that you could take. You know, you often hear about comedians who might be sort of completely outrageous in public, but in private,
right,
are
totally.
sort of, yes, completely the opposite.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of one of those social mechanisms that
right.
operate. But
He's just putting on the costume, as it were.
yes, there is quite a significant volume of these so-called transgressive poems, and they can range from making fun of religious observance to complete obscenity.
Yeah. I mean, there's a smaller body of work that I thought you might be particularly interested in, but I don't know if you are or not, and that's the hunting poetry. Just because you've done so much hunting poetry before, translated, worked on.
Yes.
How do you find his hunting poetry?
So, Abu Nuwas's hunting poetry, he has about 35 poems which are said to be by him, and about 85 or so, perhaps more, I forget, which are attributed to him.
Oh, that's not a small body of work then.
No, it was a big project. His own poems are really quite unique because he's so early in the tradition, where the move away from the ancient poetic tradition to the Abbasid poetic tradition. He's so early in that stage that what he seems to do is to distill the range of possibilities. So he will either describe a hunting expedition and describe the animals used, or he will just describe the animal itself and not talk about any of the other attendant details.
So that is quite a shift.
Yes, and I think it is Abu Nuwas who popularises the fact that a lot of the hunting poetry is indebted to the suspended poem, the Mu'allaka of Imrul Qais, that we've discussed in another podcast. And the hunting section there begins with a set phrase, and Abu Nuwas uses that for almost every one of his hunting expedition poems.
Oh.
And I think he is the one that makes that the kind of standard opening for all future hunting poems. But
so
in terms of his knowledge of the individual animal and his ability to describe the details of the hawk or the cheetah, whatever, there's a level of intimacy and an ability to shape the words to the object that is really quite remarkable.
That's a really good example of being told to memorize 1,000 and forget 1,000.
Yes.
It's
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, definitely.
drawing
Yes.
directly on the tradition and making it entirely his own.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And perhaps the type of poetry that got him into most trouble was
Yes.
the invective.
Yes. Yeah.
What's
well,
that?
you know, if you go about attacking important people for whatever reason, you
What
might.
made him do it?
Oh, well, I mean, what makes any of us get fed up with other people's behaviour?
Yeah.
You know, there are just some things that bring you to the boil, and
Yeah.
you just have to call it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So normally it's about pretension. It's about individuals who claim to be something that they're not.
He can't bear it.
No. And he describes one individual who claimed he was a great philosopher. And Abu Nuwas visits him in Egypt. And I think he may be part of some network or whatever, but he shows absolutely no hospitality to Abu Nuwas. So he violates rule number one.
Yeah.
Right? Xenophilia.
Yeah. Yeah.
Friendship
Basic
to guests.
rule.
Absolutely fundamental.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hospitality.
Yeah.
Hospitableness. And so Abu Nuwas absolutely mercilessly destroys this individual. And of course, he takes the opportunity to elaborate on the individual's aberrant sexual proclivities in the course
Right.
of the satire. And this, you know, it's an extremely well crafted and constructed poem, but it's sort of brutal in its vulgarity. And the whole point is that we're dealing with a culture in which how you present yourself in public is extremely important. Right?
And poetry is public, right?
Yes.
It gets circulated.
It gets circulated. And what you don't want is for any shame to attach to your reputation.
Yeah.
So in that regard, the satire is the opposite of the panegyric.
Right. Right.
And so once you're satirized, you become part of the community of the satirized.
Oh, yes.
And it never leaves you. It never goes away.
I didn't realise it was quite so sticky.
Yes. The other function that satire provided was if you wanted to leave the service of a patron, you composed a satire on the patron. And that was your...
Goodbye.
Yeah, bye-bye. I don't want to work for you anymore.
Yeah, you got to be pretty sure of where you're going next.
Yeah. Yes.
Now, I know there's so much more. It sounds as though we've presented lots of this poetry, but there are many more things he did, aren't there?
Yes.
So perhaps the final sort of category might be
Yes.
the threnody.
Yeah, the sort of laments for the deceased.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, I mean, he has a number of them. A couple for Harun al-Rashid and Al-Amin, whom we've mentioned already.
Yeah.
But my favourite is a very, very short, touching one he did for the death of a son. And he says, "Death destroyed all my joy that morning I came home, grey-haired and aged. I must have offended death, for it took its revenge by killing my son." And I think you get in there Abu Nuwas's sort of simplicity.
Yeah.
There's an honesty,
Yeah.
a directness, but, you know, even over the centuries,
The grief.
you get the grief
Yeah.
straight away.
Yeah.
You know,
Again.
what have I done to death to deserve this?
Yeah.
Why did you take my son?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, in the end, you know, what I always like to remind myself is Abu Nuwas was a human being with all of the contradictions and all of the foibles and the benefits and minuses and so on that come with being a human being. But of all the poets that I'm familiar with, certainly within the Arabic tradition, his is the one that allows us access to the human being, to him as a human being. There's something unique for me about it,
Yeah.
in giving access to someone's individuality
Yeah.
and personality. When we take away all the noise and all the bluster and all the this
Mythology.
and the that,
And the myth. Yeah.
Yes. There's something in this poetry that just seems to open up a door and allow you into a very personal way of being in the world.
That's a wonderful way to end. Again,
Thank you.
we could have spoken for hours, couldn't we?
Yeah, we could have.
An incredibly rich poet, and as you say, direct, simple, and yet layered and rich.
Yes.
But rewards reading.
Yes.
And you've translated a lot of them, so people who do not have the Arabic skills still have access.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for downloading this podcast.